All right, we're going to call this meeting of the Capital Budget Subcommittee and the House Appropriations Full Committee to order. Thank you all for your patience as we moved into our hearing. We are going to start our hearing with Department of General Services and call on our budget analyst, Yashadara Rai, to give us the DLS analysis of their capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I am Yashadara Rai and will be presenting the fiscal 27 capital budget analysis for the Department of General Services, or DGS. The chart on page 1 shows the 4 projects that are programmed in the 2026 CIP and are funded with GEO bonds. Fiscal 27 budget includes about $2 million for the Treasury building and $281,000 for the Wineland building. The 2 charts on page 2 show that $125.7 million is programmed for various statewide and regional grants and loans in the 2026 CIP. This includes $57.6 million as grants funded through general funds and $3.5 million in special funds for the Facilities Renewal Fund. Moving on to key observations on page 3, the first bullet highlights that $63.2 million for 52 projects is programmed for the Facilities Renewal Fund for fiscal 27. This includes $59.7 million in GEO bonds for 45 projects and $3.5 million in special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, SEIF, for 7 projects at MDH facilities. The second bullet notes that planned fiscal 27 funding of $1.5 million in GEO bonds for the fuel storage tank system replacement program is deferred to fiscal 27 due to the availability of prior authorized funds. The last bullet notes that the 2026 CIP includes $57.6 million in general funds for miscellaneous grants. We will discuss this momentarily. Beginning at the bottom of page 4, the analysis provides updates for 3 projects. The first one is the State Center complex demolition. As of October 2025, 7 of the 12 agencies have completed their relocation to a new office space. The remaining agencies are estimated to be relocated by the first quarter of calendar 27. The Moore administration is pursuing redevelopment of the State Center through a transit-oriented concept. A pre-development consultant contract was awarded by Metco in September last year and is expected to be completed by December 2027. The estimated consultant cost is $2.3 million. Prior authorization of $1.5 million in DGS was transferred to MDOT, and any scope of work exceeding the $1.5 million will be MDOT's responsibility. The MDOT's capital transportation program includes $2.4 million for the State Center redevelopment strategy. DGS should comment on its plan for the site when it remains vacant for about 9 months in calendar 2027. Its contingency plan if the pre-development phase is not completed by the expected date, and should also clarify if additional funding is required during the time the site remains vacant. The second project is a Revolutionary War memorial for Black soldiers. First of the 2 figures is expected to be delivered to the foundry this month, and the second figure is expected to be delivered next month. The memorial site design is complete with construction to start in April of 2026, and the unveiling ceremony is scheduled for August of 2026. The fiscal 26 capital budget included $250,000 more than was intended in GEO bonds for this project, and DLS recommends deauthorizing $250,000 to align with the expected authorization. The third update is the deauthorization of $3 million in GEO bonds for the restoration of the State House and the old Treasury building. This is because the project is substantially complete. Deauthorization is included in the capital budget bill as introduced. Moving on to the 2 projects that receive funding in fiscal 27, beginning on page 6. The fiscal 27 capital budget includes $2.1 million in GEO bonds to begin design for the renovation of the Goldstein Treasury building. Part 2 of the facility program is expected to be completed by this month. The estimated total project cost is $2.4 million higher than planned last year. This project will require a phased approach as it is currently occupied by the Comptroller, the State Treasurer's Office, and BPW. The second project, which is the Wineland Building, receives $281,000 in GEO bonds in fiscal '27 to begin project design. This is $22,000 more than the 2025 CIP due to revised escalation costs. The revised facility program is currently under approval by DBM, and DGS will assist the current tenants to relocate to a temporary location in calendar of 2029. DGS should comment if temporary locations have been identified and if additional funding is needed to assist with the relocation. The top of page 9 highlights two out-year projects. The Central Services Building Renovation Project is currently programmed to receive $1.1 million in fiscal 2031, and the Income Tax Building Renovation Project is programmed to receive $1 million in fiscal 2031. Moving on to the two statewide funds that DGS administers, Exhibit 1 on page 10 shows that a total of $316 million for the Facility Renewal Fund is programmed over the next 5 years. Fiscal 27 includes $63.2 million split into $59.7 million in GEO bonds for 45 projects and $3.5 million in special funds for 7 projects. The out-year funding is currently expected to be with GEO bonds. In fiscal 24, $36 million of the fund was encumbered and $29.3 million was expended. However, the fiscal 25 encumbrances and expenditures were lower than fiscal 24, and DGS should comment on the reasons for the lower fund utilization. Exhibit 2 on page 11 shows the amounts for facility renewal projects classified into 5 different priority categories, with priority 1 being the most urgent. The overall size of the backlog grew by 33% compared to last year, with the largest change in priority 3 projects. And as mentioned earlier, the fiscal 27 CIP includes 7 projects for a total of $3.5 million, which are eligible to be funded through SEEF. DLS has identified 2 additional DPSCS projects that could be eligible to be funded with additional SEEF funds. These are listed on page 12, and recommends reducing the GEO bond funding for the Facilities Renewal Fund by $9 million. Exhibit 3 on page 13 shows that the fiscal 27 budget includes $5 million in GEO bonds for the Construction Contingency Fund, CCF. This is $2.5 million higher than what was planned last year to replenish the fund balance, as DGS anticipates expending $7.1 million in fiscal 26 for 4 projects. Exhibit 4 on page 14 shows the CCF balance at the end of calendar 2019 to 2025. This includes the $5.5 million that were authorized in fall of 2025 but was not accounted for in the year-end fund balance. The statewide fuel storage tank replacement program begins on page 14 and notes that the fiscal 27 funding of $1.5 million in GEO bonds that was programmed last year is deferred to fiscal 28. As of January 31st, 2026, this program has an unencumbered balance of $4.1 million, of which $1.5 million will be used for the Northeast Barrack. $1.3 million is expected to fund the construction contract for the McHenry Barrack, and the remaining balance of $1.3 million is expected to support the Westminster Barrack. Exhibit 5 on page 15 lists the 5 miscellaneous grants included in the fiscal 27 budget for a total of $67.6 million. This includes $10 million in GEO bonds for the University of Maryland Enterprise Corporation project. These grants are discussed beginning page 16. For the expansion of AstraZeneca facilities, the CIP proposes $14.6 million in general funds annually in fiscal 27 through 2031 to support facility improvements and expansions in Frederick and Montgomery counties. Design is expected to begin by March 2026, and construction is expected to begin in September of 2027. The total estimated project cost is $1.8 billion for a state share of 6.4%. The CIP also proposes one-time state funding of $10 million in general funds for the Madison Square Garden Group, Sphere, Maryland. The total estimated project cost is $1.4 billion for a state share of 0.7%. $1.2 billion of the project cost will be funded with private financing, but the project also anticipates using local tax increment financing, parking garage revenue, and Midco financing for the project. Design began in January, and construction is projected to start in November. The proposed grantee is still in the process of negotiating a long-term lease with the property owner. Fiscal 27 allowance includes $3 million in general funds for the new Montevue Senior Living Facility. The anticipated total project cost is $41.2 million, which includes the anticipated $3.3 million award from DHCD Partnership Rental Housing Program, which brings the total state share to 15% for the project. This project will likely also be eligible for funding through DHCD's Rental Housing Works program, and DLS recommends deleting the miscellaneous grant funding due to the availability of additional funding through DHCD programs. Exhibit 6 shows the capital funding for quantum-related projects from fiscal 22 to 28 for a total of $100 million. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $40 million to continue 2 projects related to the Capital of Quantum Initiative, including $30 million in PAYGO funding and $10 million in GEO bonds. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $10 million in general funds and $10 million in GEO bonds to UMEC for Capital of Quantum projects, and also includes $20 million in general funds to support the design and construction of a new headquarters for IonQ. The estimated total cost of the facility is about $186 million. This project received $10 million in general funds and $5 million in GEO bond funding in fiscal 26, and is expected to receive $50 million in PAYGO funding in fiscal 28 for a total share contribution of 26.9%. The fiscal 26 budget included $27.5 million in operating funding for quantum initiatives, and the fiscal 27 allowance includes additional $14 million for 3 quantum initiatives, which are highlighted on page 19. DLS recommendations for PAYGO appears on page 3, and GEO bond recommendations appear on page 4. This is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rai. Any questions from the subcommittee? All right, we will invite our secretary, Chief Chaudhry, to join us with any panel you might have from DGS, and we look forward to your response. And you may go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Atif Chaudhry, Secretary of the Maryland Department of General Services. To my right is Joe Sedtal, Deputy Secretary for the agency, and to my left is Courtney League, Assistant Secretary for the DGS Office of Design, Construction, and Energy. I want to start by thanking this committee for their continuing support of DGS and the many operations that we do. I also want to thank our DLS analyst, Yashadara Rai, for her commitment to understanding our mission, while also providing a strong overview of our agency and her analysis. Throughout the past year, DGS has remained steadfast in its mission to support state agency partners and advance their initiatives. Our offices and the nearly 800 dedicated employees continue to deliver vital services that support all 3 branches of state government and impact every corner of our great state. In the last year, DGS has completed State House exterior and grounds renovations, including the reopening of the old Treasury building to be open to the public for the first time in more than 30 years. We played a critical role in Governor Moore's government modernization initiative, resulting in millions of dollars in long-term savings for Maryland taxpayers. We made history with the passage of the Maryland Procurement Reform Act of 2025 and graduated our first ever Maryland Capitol Police recruiting class in 25. We also broke ground on the new Maryland Supreme Court here in Annapolis and earned national recognition for procuring over 29,000 green certified products across our state. And we installed over 123 new EV charging stations statewide and completed the construction of a new state-of-the-art Mabel Hubbard District Court located in Baltimore City. We've also completed 189 projects valued at $128 million and are actively managing 556 active projects valued at over $3 billion. In the analysis, there were 3 capital budget recommendations. DGS agrees with one recommendation, partially agrees with another, and disagrees with one of them. I'll go over them very briefly now. Recommendation 1 includes deleting funds of $3 million for the new Monteview Senior Living Facility due to the availability of funding through the Department of Housing Community Development. DGS respectfully disagrees with this recommendation, and the only reason why we're disagreeing is because we do not have yet confirmation that DHCD has the funding available for this project, or it's eligible. We're going to be working offline with our DLS analysis and DHCD on the funding options for this project, and if we are confirmed that DHCD can fund this project, we are happy to concur with this recommendation. So just a minor thing, we just want to make sure funds are available before we concur. Second recommendation is to reduce fiscal year 27 GO bond authorization for the Facility Renewal Fund for 2 projects, and instead fund these projects with additional strategic energy investment funds, also known as C funds. DGS partially agrees with this recommendation and only asks that the budget reflect the reduced amount in the deauthorized funds. And we're going to also work offline with our DLS analyst and with the Maryland Energy Administration on the funding sources for these particular projects. The issue is that there's 2 projects associated with these funding cuts. Both are DPSES projects. One is for $4.25 million for thermal energy efficiency improvements to the DPSES Police and Correctional Training Administration building. The project includes a full roof replacement as well as a building automation system replacement and 2 chiller replacements. The challenges there are we believe C funding can be utilized for the building automation system and the chiller replacement, but it won't, the roof replacement won't qualify for C funds. That's the only challenges we have. So out of the $4.25 million, we believe 1.75 will be covered through C funds. The other issue is the $4.8 million. The second project is a $4.8 million project for DPSES's Easterl Correctional Institute for air handling units replacing in the housing units. We believe all these projects will be funded, can be funded through C. So we're happy to concur on that side to have all those funds redirected as C funds. Recommendation 3 is deauthorizing funds of $250,000 for the Revolutionary War Memorial for Black Soldiers. We concur with this recommendation and believe we have existing funds of $750,000 to move forward with this and complete this project. Mr. Chairman, there's 3 discussion points as well. In the interest of time, I'm happy to go through those if you'd like me to, or defer to the committee with any questions. If you want me to hit the highlights as well, I'm happy to do that as well.
You wanted to hit the highlights of those?
Sure, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, the first discussion point was on state center agency relocations and comment on our plan for the site and if it continues to remain vacant during 27, and then our plan for this site and if redevelopment phase is not completed by the expected date. So currently there are 4 agencies remaining at State Center. All remaining agencies will be relocated by Q1 of 2027, calendar year 2027. DGS is working right now closely with Maryland Department of Transportation on a transit-oriented development for the site. We're moving forward in that regard. Right now we're currently doing engineering studies and analysis of our buildings and what they can and cannot be used for. That should be wrapping up in a couple of months. And then we'll be moving forward on solicitation for the redevelopment of that site. So what we're hoping for is next year we can minimize as best we can after we relocate the site to get a developer on board to take over the site, ownership of the site, and to redevelop the site. And then there will be estimated holding costs associated with maintaining the site. And we've made a commitment to our legislators, the neighboring community as well, to make sure that we maintain and provide security to that site until a developer takes over ownership. So there'll be some costs incurred associated with that. We'll coordinate with DBM and DLS on those costs going forward. The second discussion point is temporary relocations for agencies relocating out of the Wyland building during construction. Agencies will be relocated from there just before construction starts, which we are estimating to be in mid-calendar year 2029. And we have a very structured process through our Office of Real Estate for the mapping out of relocations. Right now, we're too early in that process, but we're leading up to it. We'll coordinate with our agencies to identify temporary space for those relocations. And the final discussion point is commenting on the reason for the lower facility renewal fund utilization in fiscal year 25. Right now, we have about a little over $60 million allocated in fiscal year 27 for sewer renewal. And we've had a couple of challenges in fiscal year 25. Some of those were drawdowns on existing funds, and some of those were updating our not to exceed on some of our statewide contracts. So we updated those well, and now we're in a good place, we believe, leading up to the end of fiscal year 26, early 27, to estimate approximately $5 million each month in encumbrances for fiscal year for sewer renewal funds. So we should be in a good place moving forward to draw down on those funds when they're allocated in fiscal year 27. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I will open it up to any questions from the subcommittee. We can't let the secretary off that easy. So, Mr.
Would ask my favorite ice cream flavor or anything, Mr. Chairman? You know, I know the LG does that typically sometimes in our Board of Public Works meetings when there's no questions.
All right. So I will take those talking points and reverse them. So the facilities backlog piece, I know you mentioned the $5 million a month, but the renewal backlog increased by about a third to $345 million this last year. Why is it growing so quickly? How can DGS, how did that happen while your spending has slowed down? And how does the $5 million a year gonna really put a dent in it? I mean, $5 million a month gonna put a dent in it?
It's a great question, Mr. Chairman, and I think it's increasing because we're doing more due diligence. We're coordinating very closely with our agency partners on existing state facilities. So we have a building assessment unit that touches all 1,400 plus buildings under our purview at least once every 2 years to do an assessment and provide recommendations regarding any improvements, upgrades that are needed to facilities. So we're doing more of a concerted effort with that and coordinating closely with our agencies to navigate putting in project justifications to justify some of these projects. So as we navigate those, I think the backlog will probably continue to increase, and that's because we are being more diligent in our analysis and assessment of our facilities and partnering with our agencies to make sure we are actually allocating we're actually asking for the projects that are needed. Historically, that has not necessarily been the case, where agencies have not been asking for the funding or coordinating on that. We've got a very structured process for facility renewal funding, where agencies put in what's called a project justification. We rank those based on priorities. We've got a priority structure, a methodology associated with that. So we do that based on priority, and then we make sure that we address the most critical projects first going forward. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, how do we address that going forward? And that's going to be utilizing that criteria that we have in order to address the most critical projects first, the life safety ones, the ones that are most critical that may cause some issues, and then address more other maybe other issues such as replacing a boiler that is at the end of its useful life. So working through that process to try and get as many done as we can through that process. We also have coordinating very closely with our partner agencies on capital projects that might be necessary. And combining that with that as well as making sure we're utilizing our meeting the state sustainability goals. So the Climate Solutions Now Act, we're implementing that as well as we are changing out HVAC systems, water heater systems, others going to full electrification versus reliance on fossil fuels.
Okay, but how is that going to ensure structurally that delays don't continue? I hear you saying that you're doing your due diligence, and we obviously want you to do that. We want you to have the most high-quality procurement process as possible. But what structurally are you changing or able to implement that will ensure that the backlog is actually reducing and that we're not going to be having further delays into the future?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a combination of procurement and project management to make sure that we are moving forward in this to be able to manage the volume that's coming on. And we've got some additional statewide contracts, such as job order contracting and others in place that we can get some additional project management support as necessary to make sure we're able to navigate the funding that's forthcoming, that's being allocated so far. So we've got a little over $300 million allocated over the next 5 years in the CIP for facility renewal. So we're navigating and making sure we've got the appropriate staffing and contracts in place, statewide contracts and others, so we can attack those issues as they come up. And as these projects are adequately ranked, we're navigating those. And this is an annual basis. We do this project justification process for facility renewal projects every year. So every year we're updating them. Every year we're visiting these facilities and making sure that we're in a good place going forward. And we prioritize as necessary. So if new projects come up that may bump others down the list, we do that based on priority and making sure we're being more effective with the state's resources and state's funds.
Okay. Well, I think the goal is to make sure we're not tying up capital dollars that could be used elsewhere in the meantime. Obviously, there's, you know, a plethora of projects throughout the state that we can find great usage for those. So I would definitely encourage those structural changes to be implemented so that we can prevent those delays.
Sure, and we believe, Mr. Chairman, that we'll be able to fully encumber all the $60+ million every year that's allocated.
You, State Center, what's the estimated annual cost to maintain and secure the site during the period before we can start to repurpose it?
Great question, Mr. Chairman. I believe we're working through that right now. I think in May we'll have some estimates on what those are going forward. And that's going to depend on, the reason we're waiting until May is we're doing some assessments of the buildings right now and making the determination of which buildings we could decommission or mothball, as an example, where we might not need to maintain HVAC in the building or elevators or escalators or anything like that in those buildings. We can just, you know, just mothball them and decommission them and turn off utilities. That way there's no additional maintenance cost. Security will always be a cost going forward. It will depend on sort of what sites, which buildings remain occupied and not. So working through that process now, we're hoping to have additional information in May to be able to start the budget for the next fiscal year.
Okay. And then the last thing about Wineland relocation costs. How can we proceed with the project without knowing the costs of relocating the tenants?
So great question. I believe, and I'll defer to my assistant secretary here, but I think part of the capital costs can be utilized for rent as well.
Yeah, some of the relocation costs.
Relocation costs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we're looking at that now. Some of the costs for the temporary leasing will have to be on the operating side. We're quantifying what that is now so we can meet with the client agencies to give them a heads up on what that's going to look like. But we do have in the capital budget, there is some funds set aside to help with some of the relocation costs that are applicable or that are qualified for a capital budget expenditure.
But we're not sure what the cost is at this point, right?
So we've just begun that analysis. We should have that analysis here within the next month at the most. And that's where we'll start meeting with those client agencies to kind of inform them, this is what will need to be included in your operating budget when we get to that point. So as the Secretary mentioned, we're still 3.5 years away from getting to that point. So we're starting that process now.
So, yeah, and Mr. Chairman, so we would look for fiscal year 2030 for funds to need to be allocated for any type of rental costs that are not covered under the current capital budget. So we would be navigating that between now and 2030 for that, because we're estimating right now approximately at July of 2029 start for construction.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much. And at this time, we'll take public testimony. Mr. Secretary, if you could hang around just until that is done. But thank you very much for coming through. We really appreciate all your hard work. So I believe I have 4 witnesses, and actually 2 of them may already be in your camp, so maybe it's only 2 witnesses. Sarah Price and Victoria Venable. And Mr. Sital was already up, right? All right. And Courtney League was, okay, got it, all right, my friend. Thank you, my friend. All right. And then, so Victoria Venable's not here?
No, she is not here today.
All right. All right, Ms. Price, you have 2 minutes. We appreciate you for coming, and go ahead and proceed with your testimony.
Great. So good afternoon, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Sarah Price, and I am here on behalf of Frederick County Executive Fitzwater in support of the proposed budget, which includes grant funding for Frederick County's Montague Senior Housing Project. This project uses county-owned land to co-locate senior living with community services. Frederick County's older adult cohort is the fastest growing population, growing at about 3 times the rate of our county's overall population. According to the United Way's Alice report, 47% of senior households struggle to afford basic needs, with 51% of renters spending more than 30% of their monthly income on housing costs. This state funding will allow the county to include 84 deeply affordable units, directly advancing our shared commitment to expanding access to affordable housing options. Currently, the county is working on drafting a request for proposals, which will be issued this summer. Once a developer is selected, they will apply for the appropriate DHCD funding. While the developer will receive DHCD funding, state budget support for this project is still crucial. This is because DHCD funding will only allow us to provide affordable units, not the deeply affordable units this project aims to provide. It is incredibly difficult for the developer to commit some of the units for households with incomes at less than 60% AMI. With state funding, we will be able to provide units to residences with incomes at 50% and 30% AMI. On behalf of the county executive, I urge you to pass the governor's budget as introduced and maintain funding for this crucial affordability project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Thank you for coming down. Any questions from the subcommittee? All right. Well, you were just that thorough.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, seeing no other witnesses for this hearing, that ends the hearing of Department of General Services on their capital budget. Thank you all so much for your attendance, and we will move on to the Maryland Higher Education Commission and call on our DLS analyst, David Dropert. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good. Mr. Dropert, is it Dropert or Dropert?
Propert.
Dropert.
With the P.
Propert.
Might have spelled it a little funny.
Propert.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
All right, Mr. Propert, we appreciate you. Thank you very much, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As displayed on the first page, MHEC has 2 grant programs that are fully funded by GO bonds, the Community College Facilities Renewal Grant Program and the Community College Construction Grant Program, which receives the most funding. Exhibit 1 on page 4 shows the total funding for the construction grant program from fiscal 2021 to the planned amount for fiscal 2031. Since June 2016, the requested annual funding level by the legislature has been $80 million, but that level is frequently not reached in the period shown, which is due to the annual cash flow needs and schedule of ongoing projects. However, the 2025 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, programmed $80 million for fiscal 2030, and the 2026 CIP only programs $60 million for fiscal 2030 and 2031. The Department of Budget and Management should brief the committees as to why the planned funding levels for fiscal 2030 and 2031 are only $60 million instead of $80 million. Exhibit 2 on page 5 displays the funding history by college for the construction grant program from fiscal 2017 through the 2027 planned amounts. A total of $736.4 million has been allocated to the program during this period, of which the largest share, $165 million, has been provided to Prince George's College. Montgomery and Howard colleges have also received over $100 million. Moving to Exhibit 3, which begins on page 6, there are 14 projects at 11 community colleges that receive a total of $52.4 million in the fiscal 2027 capital budget as introduced. There are 2 new projects that receive state funding for the first time in fiscal 2027. First, on page 8 is the automotive technology renovation and expansion at the Community College of Baltimore County Catonsville campus. This project will renovate and expand the existing Transportation Technology Center and create additional automotive laboratories, including for electric vehicles, which are not possible in the current facility. The Part 1 and 2 programs are currently under review by DBM and are expected to be approved before construction is planned to begin in July 2026. Also on page 8, Frederick Community College's Catacton Hall receives state funding to begin design for a renovation and addition. This building houses the college's STEM and business programs. Exhibit 4 on page 11 lists the pre-authorizations in the fiscal 2027 capital budget. The 2027 session column contains $65.1 million for fiscal 28. The 2028 session column contains $68.5 million for fiscal 2029. And the 2029 session column contains $25.8 million for fiscal 2030. Below Exhibit 4 are 2 projects that received pre-authorizations for fiscal 2027 but did not end up receiving funding in the fiscal 2027 capital budget as introduced. First up is the Student Services Center renovation and expansion for the Community College of Baltimore County in Catonsville. During the initial design phase, additional complexities of the building were discovered, which necessitated a program modification, which will be submitted soon. Second is the new Germantown Student Services Center for Montgomery College. The program for this project is not fully approved yet, and the college is waiting for this to occur before proceeding with design. Moving to page 12, the construction grant program always has numerous ongoing projects with evolving timelines as work is performed and schedules are updated. Even after accounting for the approximately $70 million of expenditures through the first half of fiscal 2026, there remains about $194 million in unexpended funds dating back to at least fiscal 2022. The Department of Legislative Services recommends adopting committee narrative requesting the submission of an annual project status report. The report should outline the stage of design and construction completeness for all construction grant program projects with outstanding unencumbered and unexpended funds as of December 1st. Exhibit 5 on page 13 displays the amount of funding that each of the listed colleges receives in fiscal 2027 as part of the Facilities Renewal Grant Program. This facility renewal program is mandated to be 5% of the annual appropriation for the construction grant program, and each college receives funding every other year. A total of $2.6 million is funded in fiscal 2027, which is about $400,000 less than in fiscal 2026, because the construction grant program contains less funding in fiscal 27 than it did in fiscal 26. Exhibit 6 on page 14 lists the total amount that each college has received via the Facilities Renewal Grant Program since its inception in fiscal 2020. Including fiscal 27, a total of $55.1 million will be distributed over the period shown. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Proppert. Any questions for our analysts? All right, seeing none, we will call on Secretary Rai from MHEC to give us your presentation. And I believe, is this Mr. Schuster with you?
Yes.
All right, and is Ms. Music with you as well?
Yes.
Do you want Ms. Music to be up on the panel with
No,
you?
it's all right.
All right, up to you.
If we need her, we'll call her.
Sounds good.
Good
Please-
afternoon.
Please go ahead and proceed, Mr.
Yeah.
Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chair Raf and members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Sanjay Rai. I serve as the Secretary of Maryland Higher Education Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of the Maryland Higher Education Commission regarding the fiscal year 2027 capital budget. MHEC appreciates the thorough analysis provided by the Department of Legislative Services and the continued partnership with the committees in supporting Maryland's higher education infrastructure. The Commission urges adoption of the Governor's proposed capital budget for the Community College Construction Grant Program and the Community College Facilities Renewal Grant Program, which are critical investments that allow Maryland's community colleges to maintain safe, modern, and workforce-aligned facilities for its students across the state. Regarding the recommendation in the analysis on page 12, MHEC concurs with the Department of Legislative Services proposal to adopt narrative requesting an annual project status report on community college construction grant program projects with outstanding funds. The Commission is fully prepared to provide the requested report and will submit the information by the January 10, 2027 deadline. Thank you for your continued support for Maryland's higher education system.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'll open it up to the subcommittee for any questions. All right. I have a few questions. Mr. Secretary, we see in the analysis that $194 million in unexpended funds in your community college construction grant program are dating back to fiscal year 2022, right? At what point does this stop being a project timing issue and start being a project management issue within your department?
So I think it's a combination. I'm going to ask Mr. Schuster to address that balance.
Sure. So a couple things. First of all, the way our program works, the colleges themselves are the ones that manage each of the projects. And MHEC manages the grant program and then essentially the reimbursement of expenses that they incur. There's a local share requirement. The local shares always have to be spent before the state share comes in. And then, they have to submit the bills prior to them being paid. And so for some of the colleges, there's challenges getting the paperwork in time and so forth. Sometimes projects get delayed, as it says in the analysis. There's a couple that got delayed this past year, which accounts for some of the previously authorized funds not being able to be spent.
So I'm going to pause you there.
Sure.
Have you guys thought about, changing the order then and saying we don't need the local share to come in first, that we will put the state share up and eliminate the obstacles that are existing for these, community college?
My understanding
colleges?
that the state law requires the local share to be spent first.
Okay, have you proposed any kind of legislation from the administration to kind of get rid of this hurdle?
Not at this time. It hasn't really affected any of the projects going forward. The projects themselves are started and a lot of times completed by the colleges, and then, the state funds.
Well, let me ask you
after.
this, if that's the case. How many projects currently funded by the state have not yet awarded a construction contract?
How many have not yet awarded a construction contract?
Within
I'd have to
the
get back to you on
CCC
the exact number.
GP.
There's currently 30 active projects, which I would say, I would have to get the exact number as to how many haven't started construction, but I would probably say there's at least 20 of those that are in the construction phase or beyond at this point.
So at least 10 projects where the state is funding, and there have not yet been a construction contract, including dating back to 2022, fiscal year 2022.
Well, the funds themselves date back to that far. But the way that our program works is so when a project is closed out, if there's state funds that had been encumbered that are unspent, they get reverted back into the fund balance, and then we scoop those up for new projects, so that sometimes we don't need quite as much new funds to be authorized for the program. So some of the funds are old, but the projects themselves might not necessarily be old, if that makes sense.
Okay, which projects specifically account for the largest share of this $194 million in unexpended funds?
I could get back to you with specifics, but certainly off the top of my head, Marlboro Hall, Prince George's Community College is one of them. And that's not on the list for funding.
Mr. Schuster, just go ahead and get back to me
Sure.
when you have the fulsome information and the accurate response. But what it really seems like is that we're putting projects in the capital budget before they're actually ready for construction.
I wouldn't say that. The projects require a state match in order for them to get started. The lag is on the paperwork end. And so in other words, the colleges have already expended the funds and the counties have expended the funds with the expectation that the state reimburse those funds afterwards. Otherwise, the project would not get started.
Okay. Well, would you agree that if we move on to pre-authorizations, that we shouldn't be pre-authorizing $150 million in this capital budget between FY 27 and 29 when there's already $200 million sitting unspent?
No, those funds are, for the most part, encumbered for ongoing projects. Those pre-authorizations are going to enable those colleges to start those projects, continue construction so they do not fall behind schedule.
Okay. Any other questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your thoroughness here today in this hearing. Appreciate you all being here on the work that y'all have been doing. Could you speak to us about Marlboro Hall? You mentioned there's an issue with, I guess, the county and the community college not spending on the project already?
Well, it's just an ongoing project. They just haven't sent a lot of the bills in yet. The project is nearing completion. It's actually, I would say, like 99% complete. They just haven't gotten all the furniture in order to occupy the space, but apart from that, the building is built.
So when they reach out to you, you're going to
So then they have to send all the bills and paperwork, and we can't pay it until we have seen all of the.
Understood. And how much money is this that we're discussing?
I had to get back to you on the exact amount, but it's
Ballpark it
probably
for me.
about, 50 million of the
Nice.
unspent funds is in that
So,
building.
just for the record, when the community college reaches out with their receipts of $50 million or so, the state will reimburse them, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. And so I'll just close with asking you this. The administration is seeking to reduce the planned funding that we have typically done each year of about 80 million down to 60 million because the projects are not moving. That's my take. So what assurances can you give us as a committee that we're not allowing administrative delays to justify a long-term reduction in investment in community colleges?
So, I mean, just like all state projects, the budgets are funded based on the cash flow needs of those particular projects. Once a project gets approved in the budget, the cash flow is analyzed every year, and that's where the authorized funds get set in the next year, and then pre-authorized funds in the outgoing years.
I'm sorry, sir, but that just doesn't answer my question. And I don't mean to be rude, but I'm trying to understand how you guys can make assurances to us that we're not reducing investment in young people that are trying to get to the next level, that are looking to get degrees that are going to put them in four-year colleges simply because of administrative struggles that we as experts in our field should be able to overcome. What can you tell me about going forward with this administration that will give us assurances that these delays are not going to cause us to reduce our investment in community colleges across the state simply because of administrative issues?
When the budgets are when the projects are requested by the community colleges, they generally have to already have at least MHEC's approval of the Part 1 and Part 2 programs. There are several state agencies, however, that have to approve those programs before they can be started, which includes the Department of General Services and the Department of Budget and Management. And it's not until all of the programs are approved before the projects can really begin.
Okay, well, I certainly would like you to follow up on my first initial questions. I think it's clear that you understand that I have some significant concerns with these unspent funds, and that we would like to see some significant improvement over the next calendar year.
Yeah, and that's no problem, and that's why we concur with the DLS analysis to provide that report annually. But we can certainly provide you a report just like that as of now and get that to you as soon as possible. Because we certainly track all the projects as they continue.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
We will look into your suggestion about changing the requirement where county funds don't come first, state funds can also come first. Sometimes there are local permitting issues and other things that also delays project, but we will look at all unspent funds, we'll analyze every situation, and we'll see where there are administrative barriers that can be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, if I could indulge you all for one more question from from Delegate Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your questions, they inspire me. And so I just wanted to, no, I'm serious, I appreciate it. If you could send the rest of my county delegation, I represent Prince George's, you know, the information that you just told us, like, hey, there's $50 million and receipts that could be reimbursed, and we just need some paperwork sent in. So if you could send that to me at least, and the rest of my delegation, I'm sure we would appreciate that. If there are other circumstances like that, send it to the other state delegates and senators as well, because we can help prod this along for you. And I just wanted to,
that too.
Yeah, I wanted to offer us up because we can help push things along. Thank you.
We are happy to share with you and also tell you that college is engaged with us and they're also being very responsive.
Wonderful. And thank you for continuing to invest in Prince George's Community College. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Schuster, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you guys could stick around, we have two witnesses, and I'll call up Jermaine Williams and Brad Phillips, please. And whoever would like to start may go right ahead. You guys have 2 minutes each. Thank you so much for your attendance today.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. My name is Brad Phillips. I represent Maryland 16 community colleges at the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and thank you for your line of questioning. There's drastic needs to help community colleges and grow and get the facilities that we need to educate our students. We are...
I'm sorry, can you pause the time? Did the secretary leave? Oh, there he is.
He's back there.
Okay. Secretary. Go right ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's okay. We are here to support the community colleges. You have a prioritization model that the legislature asked our association to develop, a priority order for all Maryland 16 community colleges, which has been a phenomenal success to be able to get 16 community colleges across the state to advocate on behalf of all projects on our prioritization list. And we're pleased with the governor's budget. However, we have one issue we would like to request today, and that's why President Jermaine Williams is here in a minute to tell you more about that. But we're very pleased to see the level of support. We're a little bit concerned with the reduction in the out years. We want to make certain that we're fully utilizing the CIP that we have, and we have a request that can help grow our request. And I also want to say thank you for the facilities renewal grant funding that we have as well. We receive funding every other year, and it's a different amount for every other college based on how much is in the CIP, and we continue to look for solutions to fix some of the issues around the facilities renewal grant. But overall, we're very pleased to be able to have funding to help our deferred maintenance at our colleges. And with that, I'll stop talking, I'll wait for questions, and I'll turn it over to President Williams.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon, Delegate Kaiser, Delegate Severo, and all members of the committee. It's great to be with you. And thank you for your passion around community colleges, Mr. Chair, and everyone. So I'm here on behalf of Maryland's community colleges. For the record, Jermaine F. Williams, proud president of Montgomery College. Your communities, they serve 500,000 students a year. Those individuals who you're advocating for, 500,000 first-generation students, underrepresented students, historically marginalized students, and we unlock potential and transform lives and strengthen our state. Our colleges are economic anchors, right? They're preparing the workforce from Albany to Hagerstown to Annapolis to Baltimore City and every other part of the state and the entire DMV. We generate $11 billion in economic impact a year. Your 16 community colleges do. Sustain that impact, right? Our faculty and staff, they need excellent facilities. And that's why I am here. Please, I urge you to approve the capital funding for Maryland's community colleges and more surgical, and in particular, I'm here to ask you to add a project. That is Montgomery College's Theater Arts Building. We have our county match in hand, and we are looking to move forward with the design of this building. MC serves more than 46,000 students with 3 campuses. We are growing. Our enrollment has grown 23% in the last 5 years, and our performing arts program is in demand. It's a huge asset not only to our community, but this is an instructional building. This is an instructional building that is providing for the 28,000 performing arts jobs in the DMV, the 4th largest performing arts area in the country. So I'm here today to ask you to support this workforce generator. This workforce generator that is really putting our alumni in place, like Shaquille Stewart, who now works at the Baltimore Cultural Alliance, or Topher Gott, who's the lead carpenter. So please, thank you for your time, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Williams. Much appreciate your advocacy. Delegate Kaiser, please. Madam Vice Chair.
Waiting for the mic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, President Williams. I know that you said it. I just want to hear it again and have you reiterate that the Theater Arts Building is not just for performances. Can you speak a little bit more to the classroom piece of the Theater Arts Building, please?
Thank you, Delegate Kaiser. Yes, this is an instructional building. This is, think about lab space. So individuals who are learning set design, lighting, along with acting. So this is a lab space. This is where the academic component of performing arts occurs. So thank you.
Delegate Severo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony, both of you. It was mentioned by the DLS analysts, the Student Services Center at the Germantown campus, which is in my district. Did I hear correctly that there are funds or matching funds that are available, but you all are just waiting on sort of like a decision in order to move forward with the Student Services Center at Germantown campus? Did I hear that right?
Yes, you're right.
Yes, that's correct. I think we're waiting on Department of Budget and Management to approve the program so that we can expend the funds to move forward.
Gotcha. And how much is that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get back to you.
Please, I'd appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, no, I've had the, fond memories of going to Montgomery College. I took most of my classes at the Germantown campus. I know there's a lot of infrastructure there that, certainly needs refreshing and updating. And so if you could, I'd appreciate that. I know there's a good bit of construction, and glad to hear it, at the Silver Spring and Rockville campus. Just want to make sure, we're spreading the love, and that includes the Germantown campus in District 39. So thank you. If you could provide that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, sirs. I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your advocacy and for your attendance today. And with that, I believe that will conclude our capital budget hearing on the Maryland Higher Education Commission. We'll move on to the Department of Disabilities, and we'll ask Mr. Connor Brown, our DLS analyst, for this hearing to proceed with his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Connor Brown, Policy Analyst with the Department of Legislative Services, here to present the fiscal 2027 capital budget analysis for the Department of Disabilities. To begin, on page 1, the fiscal 2027 budget for the Department of Disabilities Access Maryland program allocates $1.124 million in general obligation bonds. This funding will support 6 projects, 2 for design only, 2 for construction only, and 2 for both design and construction. DLS recommends approving the general obligation bond authorization for Access Maryland. Exhibit 1 on pages 3 and 4 details the proposed projects for fiscal 2027, including 2 new and 4 ongoing projects. The issues section begins with a discussion of long-term encumbrance issues in Access Maryland. As shown in Exhibit 2 on page 5, while a majority of funds authorized in fiscal 2022 and 2025 have been encumbered, only about 15% of fiscal 2023 funds had been encumbered as of July 1st of last year. Exhibit 3 on pages 7 through 10 provides a list of Access Maryland projects that were open as of February, along with their project statuses. It shows that 16 projects that were authorized between fiscal 2021 and fiscal 2026 had not yet encumbered funds for a variety of reasons, including coordination delays, site issues, and higher costs than estimated. 2 of those projects that have been delayed due to issues that resulted in higher expenses receive additional funds in fiscal 2027. Finally, on page 11 is a discussion of factors that have been causing delays, as well as MDOT efforts to address these challenges. A new policy beginning in fiscal 2025 limits the number of open projects per agency or university, requiring applicants to complete open projects before starting new ones. MDOT reports that this change has resulted in fewer applications compared to prior years. Given the substantial funds not yet encumbered, MDOT should comment on any additional efforts to improve encumbrance rates, including the adoption of a cash flow management procedure, which was discussed previously but had not yet been implemented. With that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, we will call on Secretary Carol Beatty and any panel that you may have. Just make sure. Oh, is the secretary not here?
No, we signed up. I'm representing the department today. My name is John Brennan. I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Maryland Department of Disabilities.
You said John Brennan?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And are you Lori?
To my
Barong?
right is Ms. Lori Barong. She is the Executive Director of the Maryland Technology Assistance Program. And to my left is Ms. Kiana Baker. She is the Program Director for Access Maryland.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending today. Please go ahead with your response to the DLS analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee. For the record, I am John Brennan, Assistant Secretary of the Maryland Department of Disabilities. With me today, as I mentioned, is Ms. Lori Barong and Ms. Kiana Baker. We are here to present testimony for the fiscal year 2027 capital budget request for the Access Maryland program. I want to begin by thanking our DLS analyst, Mr. Connor Brown, for his thorough analysis and for the recommendation to concur with the governor's allowance. We respectfully support the recommended action to approve the general obligation bond authorization for this program. The DLS analysis requested a comment regarding our funding priorities and the management of encumbrances. We want to ensure the subcommittee that MDOD is fully committed to efficient fund disbursement, resource utilization, and improved program outcomes. As it relates to current progress and strategies, we are in regular communication with both DBM and DLS to identify incremental changes to our process to reduce earmarked encumbrances. As mentioned, we've implemented strategies to limit the number of open projects per agency or university, and we have seen a decrease in both applications and awards in FY26 and 27, which we attribute to agencies taking a more careful look at the readiness of their projects before they submit applications to us. As far as new measures in FY28, to further optimize the pipeline, we will implement the following changes in the next cycle. Awarded projects will be required to complete design plans within the first 9 months of award, and projects must begin encumbering funds for the design phase within 3 months of award. Failure to do this could result in canceling the project, barring any reasonable explanations for non-compliance. As it was mentioned, we have talked with both DBM and DLS about implementing a cash flow process, which the last time we discussed that was in May of 2025. We were open to implementing that if we could define exactly what it meant for our program and how to implement it in a way that worked with the program. At that point, it was determined to still pursue incremental changes, but we're open to further discussions and exploring procedural shifts as necessary during the application cycle in order to improve the rate of encumbrances. With that, I'll close by saying we remain committed to the principles of continuous service improvement as outlined in our state disabilities plan. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions the subcommittee may have for us.
Any questions from, thank you all very much. Any questions from the subcommittee? Mr. Vice Chair.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for being here. I want to take a look at the Access Maryland program, the projects that were initially authorized in 2026. And there's one for the Bressler Research Building. It was authorized for $147,000. And the status is no movement. I just wanted to verify the campus that Bressler Research Building restroom upgrades are located.
I'll ask Ms. Baker to cover that question for us.
Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Good afternoon. That is correct. Currently, Bressler has no movement on that. They've recently had a retirement on their staff as far as the person who handles these projects. So the new staff is still coming on board, familiarizing themselves with those projects. We are looking for information from them as soon as they are brought up to date on that.
Okay, great. And Ms. Baker, would you be able to verify which campus that Bressler Research Building is located?
Yeah, so UMBC at
Is that where the Bressler Research Building is located, on that campus, or is it another campus?
No, it's on that campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any other questions? I'll follow up on that. You know, there are a number of projects, I think in fiscal 21, that still have zero funds encumbered. Are people with disabilities currently unable to access those facilities because these projects haven't moved forward yet?
On those specific projects, so it's not usually facility-wide, but related to the projects until they're completed, that's correct. They are not able to, it depends on the degree and the particular project, but in some cases, that's correct. They aren't able to use a restroom, for example, if the renovation hasn't been completed.
That's pretty troubling. But I do appreciate you coming in here with a clear plan. I think you might have heard in the last hearing that I figured I would ask some similar questions of you all. But I do hear a more finite and structured response and plan going forward. Does the department have the authority to intervene when agencies fail to advance accessibility projects? And what is that ability, if any?
Within the program itself, in terms of the funding, I think we have the ability to implement procedures, just as we mentioned that we're going to do in 28, to limit funding if agencies don't show a record of implementing or using the funds based on their schedules, especially if they have a repeated history of that. That's one of the reasons why we made the limit as to how many projects could be open before they apply again. And then again, we're hoping that these changes that we make in FY28 will also sort of intensify their focus on making sure that the applications that they put forward to us and that we award are on schedule and being implemented. Our role is, that's how we can make a difference in this area in terms of trying to encourage them to be more expedient about using the funds.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you. And I think the thing about, off topic, I think the thing that really speaks to me about looking at your agency and the things that you guys are supposed to be doing is just being able to see all the different departments coming together and how you guys are a hub for the disabilities community. So I really appreciate your work, and let's get with that plan and get it structured and get it in place so that we're not here 5 years from now talking about projects that still are not permitting folks with disabilities to access those areas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we have one public witness, I believe, Hannah Zuberi. Going once. And I don't believe Hannah is here. So that, in my view, concludes our hearing on the Department of Disabilities. We will go on to our hearing on the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services capital budget. And I'll call on Josh Weinstock, our DLS analyst, to make a presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Weinstock, and today I'll be presenting the DLS analysis of the fiscal 2027 capital budget for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, or DPSCS. The planned capital expenditures for fiscal 2027 through fiscal 2031 total more than $1.2 billion in GO bonds. Exhibit 1 on the first page shows the projects that are programmed in the 2026 CIP through fiscal 2031 and beyond. There are 2 projects with proposed fiscal 2027 funding. The first begins on page 6 and is the Roxbury Correctional Institution Perimeter Fence Replacement Project. This project will replace more than 16,000 feet of perimeter and interior fencing, make upgrades to the facility's security system, and resurface the exterior road. The existing fencing is past its useful life at 43 years old and requires replacement as a result of severe storm damage sustained in March 2024. Much of the current fencing is rusted and is close to failure with leaning posts. Additionally, parts of the fence are 12 feet tall, which is less than the national standard for a medium security facility. Additionally, due to weak lighting and an outdated detection system, the security system has many false alarms and requires frequent staff checks. DBM approved emergency use of $1.8 million in general funds to begin the design after storm damage to the fence in 2024. Construction is expected to take place starting September 2026 and will take 2 years to complete. The proposed capital budget includes $1.5 million to begin construction. The overall cost of the project was reduced from last year's CIP by $8 million to a total of $27.6 million due to updated design documents. The second project in the CIP begins on page 8 and is the Maryland Correctional Institution Hagerstown Perimeter Fence System Replacement Project. This project will replace the security fence system and upgrade the electronic surveillance systems. Large sections of the current fence are easily climbable, and the fence has a number of weaknesses due to weather and corrosion, which has led to failing security audits. The fiscal 27 budget includes $1.1 million to begin design of the project, which is expected to begin in October of this year. Construction will start a year later, and the project is expected to be completed in October 2029. There are 2 out-year projects I'd like to discuss. The first begins on page 9 and is the New Life Skills and Reentry Center for Women, whose funding was deferred until fiscal 2028. The project will be a 4-unit, 64-bed housing facility in Baltimore City. The project will have an integrated on-site healthcare clinic and provide educational, job opportunities, and gender-responsive programming for women preparing for release from incarceration. This project is mandated by Chapter 16 of 2021, which required a women's pre-release facility to be operational by November 2023. The total project cost is estimated to be $108 million, which is a 15% increase from the estimate last year. The site location was initially selected in December 2022. However, it was not ready for sale to meet the project schedule and face community opposition. The new proposed site is located in the Penn Fallsway neighborhood in Baltimore City and is owned by DPSCS. The site is located directly next to the pretrial detention complex, as well as the proposed Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center, which I will discuss shortly. However, the new site is much smaller than the previous one and may not meet the needs of the population. The design firm for the project has not yet been approved by the Board of Public Works. The department has stated that the project has been put on pause until challenges to the facility's location have been resolved. Emergency House Bill 935 and Senate Bill 187 would place new requirements on the location of the facility, which the currently proposed site location does not meet. Selecting and purchasing a new site would likely delay the project by several years. The fiscal 26 capital budget and supplemental bills included $11 million for the project. However, the fiscal 27 capital budget proposes deauthorizing only $9 million, which leaves $2 million in the Department of General Services statewide capital appropriation that have not been deauthorized. DLS recommends reducing $2 million in fiscal 2026 general funds to account for the delay in the project. The final out-year project is the Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center, or BTTC, which will be a 854-bed facility that will provide therapeutic mental health and medical treatment, as well as deflection, detention, and reentry services. There have been nearly $54 million in prior authorizations for design and planning, and in fiscal 2028, there is an additional $43 million planned for the design phase of the project, with construction scheduled to begin in fiscal 2028 as well. As of November of last year, the department reported that it was in the final design phases of the project. DPSCS should provide an update on the construction contract, including an expected award date and when construction is expected to begin. Exhibit 3 on page 11 shows the changes in bed count and cost estimates for the project over time. The total project is now estimated to cost $1.2 billion by full completion, which is a $277 million increase, or an increase of 30% from last year's CIP. DPSCS should comment on the reasons for the significant increases in projected planning and construction costs. Last year's CIP programmed $231 million for the project in fiscal 2027, which has been deferred. The fiscal 27 budget also deauthorizes nearly $46 million of funds authorized in fiscal 26. The deferral of the start of construction to fiscal 2028 allows for $232 million in GO bonds to be reprogrammed. Additionally, the Baltimore pretrial complex new parking deck, estimated to cost more than $100 million, was removed from the CIP, which means if the project proceeds, the state will need to address the parking needs at the complex. The pause in funding for the BTTC project offers the state an opportunity to reevaluate the size and scope of the project, given its significant costs. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report from DPSCS on reevaluating the size and scope of BTTC. The report should assess the costs and benefits of proceeding with the project and examine alternative options for meeting the need for a therapeutic detention center. Lastly, in the issue section of this analysis, beginning on page 12, discusses overarching concerns with age and the condition of DPSCS facilities. Many of Maryland's correctional and pretrial facilities are deteriorating, which puts staff and incarcerated individuals at risk. Last year, DPSCS announced that Maryland Correctional Institution at Jessup, or MCIJ, would be permanently closing due to degradation of the facility caused by water penetration. The closure is expected to be complete by the end of fiscal 2026. The facility housed an average of 707 individuals in fiscal 2025. In December of last year, the department announced the emergency transfer of all individuals from the Maryland Reception Diagnostic and Classification Center, or MRDCC. The department stated that issues with the physical structure of the building meant that continuing to occupy the building would pose an imminent risk to staff and incarcerated individuals. In fiscal 25, there was an average of 423 pretrial and sentenced individuals housed in the facility. The department stated that the facility has not permanently closed, and they are still considering what the next steps are for the facility. The department should comment on whether it has the sufficient capacity in its other facilities to absorb the transferred population from MCIJ and MRDCC. It should also discuss whether it is concerned with the structural integrity of its other 16 facilities. Finally, Exhibit 4 on page 13 shows the DPSCS projects in the Department of General Services backlog. DPSCS accounts for 61 projects, which totals about $67 million. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstock. Any questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, we will go ahead and call on our members from DPSCS. And it looks like they're not listed. But I do not see the Honorable Carolyn Scruggs.
No, Mr.
So
Chair.
gentlemen, if you could go ahead and just introduce yourselves, and you can proceed with your presentation on behalf of the department. Thank you.
Thank you. We did notify DLS that Secretary Scruggs would be unable to attend this afternoon. My name is David Green. I am the Deputy Secretary of Operations for the Department of Public Safety. To my right is Jim Dunkerson. He is the Deputy Director for Resource Management for our Division of Capital Construction and Facility Maintenance. And to my left is Dan Washington. He is the Acting Director for our Division of Capital Construction and Facility Maintenance. As always, DPSCS appreciates the collaboration with the Department of Legislative Services and Mr. Weinstock's hard work on this analysis. In the analysis, DLS asked us to respond to 3 issues and 1 recommended action. We are conscious of the demands on your time. We have submitted written testimony, which I believe you have, so we're not going to go through each particular item. But in essence, the department does agree with Mr. Weinstock and concur with his recommended action, and we are here today to answer any questions that you may have for us.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Green. Any questions from the subcommittee? All right. So I'll start with this one. State law requires required the Women's Pre-Release Center to open in 2023. But that project still doesn't even have a finalized site. How did the department allow a legally mandated project to fall this far behind?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. The department is committed to complying with the state law. We have identified a site, and we're moving forward with DGS on the various aspects of planning that facility. However, we did decide to take a pause with our partners at DGS following some concerns raised by community advocates and some other stakeholders while we navigate that issue. And due to the current additional pending legislation, we're just taking a pause at this time until we can reevaluate.
Well, I'm going to push back on that because women in the correctional system traditionally have received fewer reentry resources than men. So how does the department justify delaying the one facility specifically designed to support women reentering the community?
Thank you for that question. While we continue on this process, the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women continues with Project Fresh, which is a dedicated pre-release unit for the women on the campus there at MCIW. They offer a variety of pre-release programs. They're currently operating 12 different reentry programs that are geared towards gender-responsive, trauma-informed reentry services for the women's population until the time that the new Life Skills Center is open.
Right, but if that center, if that facility was adequate, we would need a new state-of-the-art women's pre-release center. So that still doesn't answer my question about how we can decide to delay this project. That absolutely, where are we with finding a site?
We have identified a site.
Where is it?
It's on Forest Street.
Okay, well, based on what I've learned about this delay, that is not a finalized site. That is something that there are objections to, that people that created this legislation that is now law are not in agreement with. So where are we with finding a new site in Baltimore City that abides by the law that was passed, that was designed to get a women's pre-release center in Baltimore City in 2023?
Based on previous testimony that has been given, the site at Forest Street does comply with the previously passed legislation. But to your specific question, once concerns were raised with the community advocates and the other stakeholders, and that pause was made so that we could reevaluate available properties, acquisition costs, possible impacts to timelines, but I would need to defer you to DGS for specific answers to those types of questions.
Well, Mr. Green, you know that there is legislation being proposed this session that says, it essentially says in the legislation, do not put it at Forest Street, right?
The legislation would call for different property requirements, yes,
right.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
you coming in here and saying to me that you have a site that's at Forest Street is completely tone deaf. What are we doing about finding a site in Baltimore City that is not on Forest Street, that abides by the law and establishes a women's pre-release center as quickly as possible?
I would have to defer you to DGS on specific questions for property searches in Baltimore.
Okay, give me a moment. Let's talk about the BTTC. Give me 1 second. Oh, Delegate Metzger, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just from Essex, and I just tell it like it is. This is mandated in 2021, and now you're saying a pause. And I'm just going to ask you, how long of a pause do you need? How long of a pause do we expect, or how long of a pause do you want? This is supposed to be done. This is already 3 years later, and we're not even near a site. So I think we need to get the hammer rolling and find a spot and get it done. Thank you.
Isn't that so? Is that what you said?
Isn't that so?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate Metzger. As I've said, we are ready to move forward with the design phase of the project, which is where we had paused in December.
Wait a minute, you said we've been moving forward. You've been saying that you've been sitting here. So we need to find out exactly what you're waiting for. Just tell us exactly where you're at, what your next step is, and do it ABC. Ask, believe, and can do it.
Yes, sir. Prior to the pause in December, we were moving into the design phase.
When did you have a pause in December? Of this year, last year, 2 years ago?
2025.
Okay. So what happened between 23 and 25 that there was no movement?
I was not in this administration at that time, sir. I can certainly look into that a little bit more and get back to you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate.
We need answers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Delegate Metzger. I think another delegate inspired. But okay. On to BTTC. You guys would acknowledge that the cost of it has ballooned to a place that we never anticipated. It's projected now to cost $1.2 billion for a facility that holds only 854 beds. That's essentially $1.4 million per bed. How does that compare to other correctional facilities?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you be more specific on the question?
How does the cost per bed of this facility that's proposed to be placed in Baltimore City, how does that compare to other facilities around the country, even just in the region?
Thank you for that question. As we mentioned in our written testimony, there are a number of reasons that cost escalated. Ongoing inflation in the construction industry. And what I can do for you, sir, we can take a look at some other facilities and provide some additional information to you on the comparative analysis on bed cost.
Okay. Yes. Delegate Forbes, I'll let you cut in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note for the record that the written testimony isn't loaded in the state system, so we don't have access to that. If you would please provide it to us, to our emails, we'd really appreciate it.
Yes, we will certainly do that. It was our understanding that it was provided if it did not get loaded by IT. I think it may have been emailed also to Mr. Weinstock, but we'll certainly ensure that you receive a copy.
Thank you, Delegate Forbes. I did get a copy of it emailed to me, and I'll share that with the subcommittee if you all were not on that email. But it was like 2 hours ago. Sticking with BTTC, since the project is paused, what is the contingency plan at this point to ensure compliance with Duval v. Moore and that consent decree?
Thank you for that question. The department is very pleased to announce that in December of 2025, we achieved compliance with the mental health component of the Duval versus Moore litigation, which represents a closure of that mental health component. BTTC is not needed in order to achieve compliance with Duval. As mentioned, we are well on our way with the mental health portion, and we are very confident in our efforts to the medical portion. So it's not needed to achieve compliance, but its existence undoubtedly makes it less likely that the department would be faced with similar litigation in the future.
Okay. And I'll kind of wrap up here. You talked about in your agency response the structural integrity of other facilities around the state, and you indicated that you had no structural integrity concerns currently, but you also stated that the assessments for several regions have not yet been completed. So how do you make the determination that there are no structural integrity concerns without having completed the assessments?
Thank you for that question. So the assessments themselves, the on-site inspections by DGS's building assessment unit have been completed. We just haven't received the full written reports from them yet. But our facility maintenance staff are accompanying them on those inspections, and any immediate integrity issues are to be brought to our attention.
Okay. Any other questions? Delegate Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate you all for the work that you do. I wanted to give you all another opportunity to answer a question that Delegate Metzger raised and talk about the women's pre-release facility between 2023 and 2025. If you could speak more to how we got to this point that we're at today. I can't imagine that you can't give us an update on what happened between 2023 and 2025.
Thank you for that question. As mentioned, I was in a previous role at the time. What I can do is provide a more detailed description on what events have taken place and what progress has been made between 2023 and 2025, and provide that to you and the rest of this subcommittee.
Okay, but when you took your position, and I assume that it's, when did you take your position?
Shortly after the new year, this year, January 2026.
Okay, I understand that. I'm looking to be reasonable here, but it just feels like it hasn't been a priority, that there hasn't been a larger discussion for you to be the person who was told to represent your agency to not be able to speak to that 2-year gap here. So it's pretty significant.
I understand, sir. I can speak to the fact that the department is committed to complying with this legislation. The department has been actively engaging with community advocates and was prepared to move into that design phase. Prior to that, I am aware that there was a program design committee working with outside consultants and subject matter experts on specific programming and what types of treatment programs and services would be provided at that facility. And moving forward with our partners at DGS, prepared to enter that design phase when, as mentioned by this subcommittee so far today, there has been significant pushback from various community advocates and other stakeholders that caused us to, all right, we don't want to put a facility in a location where not everyone is happy. Sure. So we'll put a pause. DGS, who, they are our construction firm in this project. As far as assessing and evaluating and taking a look at what other properties are available in the areas that the existing legislation requires, I would need to defer, specific questions to them, but they were evaluating those other properties. They were looking at what those acquisition costs would be, considering how those things would impact timelines. And that's where we were at the point that we, kind of took a pause in December through this legislative session and waiting to see what the outcome of this pending legislation is so that we know which direction specifically to move as we continue to move forward with that design phase.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. I really appreciate the work that y'all do. You got a tough job, and I do want to lift that up. But this is very important to us and important enough for us to pass legislation on it. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Definitely, I echo those sentiments, Delegate Ivey. We have the department planning and getting to the doorstep of starting construction on a over $1 billion facility for, incarcerating males that costs over $1 million per bed. But a facility, a smaller facility, much cheaper facility for women, for women's reentry and support system for them to be able to be fully reintegrated into society, still doesn't have a site. Those two things just don't add up and are cause for serious concern from this chair and from the members of the subcommittee. So we want this to be a priority. It needs to be a top priority. It needs to allow you all to move with extreme quickness to find a site and to get this project off the ground as quickly as possible. And we will be your partners in that, and we will support you because we are the ones that passed the legislation. And so with that, more inspiration. Delegate Acevedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to, not just echo the comments of the chair, but just to provide, because I heard it from the gentleman on the panel that, he wasn't in this role over the past couple of years, just some history on the project. I mean, since I've been here in 2019, that was under the Hogan administration, advocates, stakeholders, and legislators on both sides of the aisle have been calling for the building of this women's pre-release facility. And I guess what you're hearing today is frustration in that we are in two different administrations where commitments have been made by administrators to essentially build and get this women's pre-release facility done. And 7 years later, because this started way before 2019, I came in 2019, but 7 years later, we're in 2026, and we're still having that conversation. So I hope folks understand that the frustration is bipartisan, the concern is bipartisan, and the hope is both sides of the aisle that this is something that would be prioritized. Not saying that you all won't, but understanding the history of the project, a lot of us have some reservations when we hear things like, this is something that we're going to work on and so on. I heard that from the previous DPSCS secretary who came from my own county, right? So that's really just what we're trying to emphasize, that this is something, we're talking the Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center, that's over $1 billion. I personally am not a fan of that project, not just based on the cost of it, but the fact that we continue to invest, in my opinion, more so on carceral rather than some of the front-end issues that would support young people in the way that they need to. But coming back to women's pre-release, I don't know how else to say it, but this is a frustration that a lot of us have had for 7 years now. And so it didn't just start with this administration, but the hope is that it will end with this. So I'm sure you all are partners in that work, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't that so?
I believe it is. Thank you, Delegate.
If I may, Delegate Acevedo and Delegate Ivey and Chairman Ruff, your points are well received. So thank you all.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll relay them back to Madam Secretary. We're sad that she's not here today. Do we know why she was unable to attend?
Just a conflict in the schedule today.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I believe we have at least 2 folks to testify in public testimony, so if you all would remain and listen to that testimony, we would appreciate it. I'll call on the Reverend Kevin Slayton as well as Frank Patinella. And either one of you can start. You each have 2 minutes to testify. Thank you both for your advocacy and for coming in today.
2 minutes, and you told him I was a reverend. Come on.
It's because fair. I know you.
That's not fair. On another note, very glad to see you in that role. Kevin Slayton, I'm with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy, and I'm here to urge the committee to reauthorize funding for the planning and construction of the Women's Pre-Release Center. For many of the women in Maryland returning from incarceration, it can be difficult due to a lack of adequate pre-release services. And the data from DPSCS shows that in fiscal year 2025, there are 83 women who returned to their communities with no local reentry agreement. Fiscal year 2026, the current projections show 38 women with no local reentry agreement. Since the veto override of the Senate Bill 684, the Gender Responsive Pre-Release Act in 2021, planning for the Women's Pre-Release Center has been met with delays, as you all just discussed, partly due to a delay in funding, but it was not until 2023, this session, that the legislature allocated the $3 million in general obligation bonds and $2 million from the general fund for the capital budget to begin planning and construction. But up until the fiscal year 2027 capital improvement plan, DPSCS's capital budget for the Women's Pre-Release Center totaled just over $3 million, with $9 million in general obligation bonds and $4 million in general funds. DPSCS, working with DGS, was then tasked with finding an adequate site and facility. This year again, due to cited delays, The capital improvement plan deauthorizes $7 million in general obligation bonds and $2 million in general funds. We've just had this discussion. So for DPSCS and DGS to begin reassessing locations and planning for the facility, the timing of funding is imperative. Delays are costly each time they happen. Deauthorizing these funds can impact the timeline and create further delays if funding is not available to proceed with the planning process. For these reasons, the Maryland Center on Economic Policy respectfully requests that the House Capital Budget Subcommittee reauthorizes $9 million in funding to ensure the adequacy of the site and that funding is available as soon as it is needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Mr. Petinelli.
Good afternoon, almost pretty much good evening, right? Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee, my name is Frank Patinella, for the record. I'm Senior Campaign Strategist for the ACLU of Maryland. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition. And we have the same ask here as the Reverend. I don't want to go through this because you guys had this conversation. But I do want to point out a couple things. I think some things got lost in between administrations. I'd like to say that DPSCS and DGS are working with the coalition in good faith. We had a meeting with them last fall and talked about a lot of these details in terms of the site, the facility specifications that are needed to ensure that the women have what they need. There's some things in the analysis that need to be updated. It's not going to be a 64-bed facility. The Reverend just said, I think it was 83 or 84 or something. And I think the new bill says a 1.25 multiplier on the 2024 pre-release, number of women in pre-release. So that might be up around 100 beds. Because you want to build this, if you're only going to build it once, it needs to be able to hold the number of women who are going to be eligible for pre-release. I heard a comment, not everyone's going to be happy, right? Whenever you build anything, and we're talking about a pre-release center. So I think it's really important that the conversation and the collaboration between DPSCS, DGS, and the coalition remain or get stronger as we go forward. They can be a source of support when you are looking at a site, and those residents need to hear from the directly impacted women who are going to be residing there and who have been advocating it. For this project. And, these women have been champions, right? They've served their time, they've re-entered the community, and they're using up a lot of their free time to advocate for women who are in their situation, right, who are going to be returning. So I encourage that collaboration to continue. And when I look at the timeline in the analysis document, it says very loudly that this is not a priority. And I hope that this committee can work with the bill sponsor on the House side, Delegate Crutchfield. I think it's House Bill 935. Work with the sponsor, work with DGS, work with DPSCS, and see if we can get this timeline and the allocations in terms of the capital allocations over the next few fiscal years up, right? We want that initial money to be able to start the site, the feasibility studies and the design process. But there's no money in the budget for this coming fiscal year. The next couple fiscal year, very little money. So I'm just wondering if this really is a priority. And I'd like to see, I worked on, the Baltimore City School construction program. There's like 30 or so schools built in a short amount of time. So it can be done, right? I think whatever you can do to fast track this. The women have been waiting, and this is the law. Thank you.
We hear you,
Thank you. Mr.
Patinella. Much appreciation to you for your advocacy. Are there any questions of the subcommittee? Mr. Patinella or Mr. Slayton? But Mr. Patinella, since you represent the Maryland Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition, Do you have any understanding about Project Fresh and its comparison to what the Women's Pre-Release Center that is supposed to have been built already, how those compare?
I'm going to refer you to the women leaders of the coalition, Monica Cooper. Specifically, yeah. I visited MCIW with DPSCS, and that was my first, site visit. I learned a little bit about Project Fresh. My understanding is that the coalition doesn't believe that those services are adequate, and that they envision much more comprehensive programming, evidence-based programming. I think that all has to be. That's also part of the conversation with the coalition.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, that I believe ends the hearing on DPSCS's capital budget. Thank you both for coming down and for your testimony. And we will move on to our second to last hearing on the Interagency Commission on School Construction with our DLS analyst, DLS analyst Catherine Barber. Alex Donahue is the executive director. Sorry, Mr. Donahue. Hopefully things are getting lighter in here now. Thank you, Catherine. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ruff. For the record, my name is Catherine Barber, and I will be presenting the 2026 capital analysis for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. Starting on page 1, the 2026 CIP allocates $522.5 million for 5 programs in fiscal 27. The graph on page 2 shows that general obligation bonds make up $453.5 million of the total, and special fund PAYGO makes up the other $69 million. On page 5, Exhibit 1 shows this funding by program. Turning to page 6, Exhibit 2 shows that between fiscal 22 and 27, new public school construction funding has met or exceeded the legislative intent of $450 million. Turning to page 7, Exhibit 3 shows IAC's 90% funding allocation and 100% funding recommendation for the public school construction program, which is the primary statewide funding source for school construction. In the 2026 CIP, this program receives $300 million. However, IAC's recommendations total $280 million, representing approximately 37% of the total fiscal 27 request. Statute requires that IAC make its 90% recommendations by March 1 each year based on the allocation included in the governor's proposed capital budget. However, IAC's February 2026 recommendations are based instead on the amount planned in last year's CIP. IAC should comment on the process for making its 90% recommendations and why its February 2026 recommendations account for only 84% of the proposed fiscal 27 authorization. Discussion on the Build to Learn program begins on page 8. This program funds similar projects to the public school construction program, but is financed through the issuance of revenue bonds by the Maryland Stadium Authority. Page 9, Exhibit 4 shows the 3 Built to Learn bond sales to date, which total $1.1 billion. The final revenue bond issuance was projected to occur in fiscal 27, but has been pushed back to fiscal 28 based on project readiness. On pages 9 and 10, Exhibit 5 shows anticipated Built to Learn allocations by LEA based on statutory percentages. Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Montgomery County are each allocated 21% of the total bond proceeds. In Prince George's County, Built to Learn funding is uniquely tied to the county's public-private partnership model, which receives $69 million in special fund PAYGO in the 2026 CIP. This includes $42 million from the county and $27 million from the Maryland Stadium Authority. On page 13, Exhibit 7 shows funding for the Enrollment Growth and Relocatable Classroom Supplemental Grant Program, which supplements the public school construction program and provides funding to LEAs with enrollment growth that exceeds 150% of the statewide average, or with an average of more than 250 relocatable classrooms over a 5-year period. This program receives $80 million in mandated funding in fiscal 27. Discussion of the COP Priority Fund begins at the bottom of page 13. Beginning in fiscal '27, this fund will be used to address severe facility needs in schools. The fiscal '27 budget includes $70 million for this program as mandated. In fiscal '28, the purpose of the fund shifts to address the facility needs of the highest priority schools in the state as identified by ISC's statewide facilities assessment. The work group on the assessment and funding of school facilities is statutorily responsible for determining how to prioritize and rank school facility needs based on ISC's data and local priorities. As of the 2026 session, however, the work group has not been convened and prioritization criteria have not been set. ISC should discuss its process for prioritizing projects in fiscal '27 and in future years if the work group does not convene. The final program funded in the 2026 CIP is the DeGrange Non-Public Aging Schools Program, which is a non-statutory program first funded in fiscal 2014. This program provides grants to non-public schools for minor renovations and infrastructure repairs. The CIP includes $3.5 million in GO bonds in fiscal '27. Finally, the Healthy Schools Facility Fund no longer receives an appropriation after the mandated funding period ended in fiscal '26. In fiscal '21 through '26, at least half of the program's funds were statutorily committed to projects in Baltimore City. However, Baltimore City has yet to expend $40 million in ARPA federal funds provided through the HSFF in fiscal '22 and '23 for COVID-19 mitigation in schools ahead of the December 2026 spending deadline. Thus, the BRFA of 2026 would authorize the IAC to reallocate Baltimore City's funds to HVAC upgrades in other jurisdictions. The general obligation bonds originally used to fund those projects would then be available to backfill funding for Baltimore City's projects. Turning back to pages 3 and 4, you'll find the DLS recommendations. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's pay-go allowance and approving all general obligation bond authorizations for the IAC. And that concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Delegate Ivy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Barber, for the wonderful work here. For those back at home, could you go to Exhibit 5 on page 9? This is the built-to-learn allowances and allocations. I see it's broken down statutory percentage here, and then Prince George is pulled out. Could you just go in a little more detail and really just make it very simple for those of us watching back home?
It's going to have to be simple because this is my first year with this agency. My understanding is that Prince George's County has, on its own terms, pursued a public-private partnership to fund its school construction programs. And because of that, they have a memorandum of understanding with the state government to pursue funding separately from the Build to Learn funding that supports other jurisdictions.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Oh, wait, thank you. Absolutely. I'm just trying to see if that was the right decision that Prince George's made. That's it.
I don't know if I'll offer an opinion on that, whether that was the right decision, but
Understood, okay.
that's the reality we're working with.
Of course, absolutely. And so I was just digging into the numbers. There's a split between Prince George's County puts forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you talk about the 69 million overall, what is that? 42 of it is coming from?
Yes, 42 from the county and 27 from the Maryland Stadium Authority.
Okay. Okay. And so that number is connected to Exhibit 5.
Exhibit 5 does not include Prince George's County, so it's separate.
Right. But so if in 2026, and when we look at the approved allocation, that's 2027, correct? Or?
Yes, for 2027.
Okay. So I guess I'm just looking at 2026 capital improvement program provides $69 million, 42 of it coming from Prince George's itself, 27 coming from the state. But then if you flip back onto page 9 or to Exhibit 5, there are numbers that are much larger than 69 million.
Can you clarify?
Approved allocation for similarly sized jurisdictions significantly more than $69 million. Or am I
Correct.
reading this incorrectly?
No, that's correct. I think IAC can probably provide more information than I can about this.
Sure.
But my understanding is that Prince George's County elected to opt out of the standard program.
Yeah.
And I think that they can provide more detail about the impact on that.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight this here for everyone. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This also might be a question for IAC, but just on to one of your last points about the BRF authorizing IAC to reallocate Baltimore City's expiring federal funds. The backfill, would that then delay, or, well, how soon would those GO bonds from other projects then be available to backfill the Baltimore City?
I think they can also speak to the timeline, but my understanding is that the HVAC projects in other jurisdictions have already been paid for, and then the GO bonds that would be paying for those are going to Baltimore City. The fund swap, in my understanding, is relatively immediate.
Got it.
But they should be able to provide an update on that.
All right. Thank you so much. We had to give you a couple of questions since you haven't been with this agency long. All right. With that, seeing no other questions, we will call up Mr. Donahue at this time and your panel. And we look forward to your presentation. And go right ahead when you are prepared.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, I'm IAC Executive Director Alex Donahue, and with me today is IAC Funding Programs Manager Arabia Davis. Chair Casemeyer sends his regards and regrets that he cannot be here today due to what I hope is a run-of-the-mill late winter virus and not COVID. But I thank you for this opportunity to testify on our capital budget, and I thank Catherine Barber for the thorough analysis and for all of her support. Would you like me to answer 2 questions first or later?
However you want to proceed. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Then I will answer the questions to provide the requested information. First, for Delegate Ivey's question, Prince George's is receiving, instead of a share in the short-term built-to-learn program like the other larger counties, Prince George's is receiving an annual amount of $27 million per year outside of the BTL program for 30 years. So the total is actually much larger than the other jurisdictions. And that money will be going out as $27 million per year as the state share of the public-private partnership annual availability payment, which pays for the 8 schools that are being constructed in that program now, or over the next 3 years. And so the amount is actually much larger than any other jurisdiction. Happy to take any follow-ups if you have them. If the chair, no? Okay. Very good, thank you. And Mr. Chair, with regard to the BRFA question, the dollars coming from GO bonds to backfill for Baltimore City are available immediately. The fund swap is an accounting move on the IAC's part that is completely back of the house, transparent, does not affect any project progress at all. It simply exchanges dollars that are going to pay for that Baltimore City stack of projects from short expiring funds to funds that will give a number of additional years for Baltimore City to execute the projects and be reimbursed when they're ready. And so it just saves the state and the city a lot of money. Very good, thank you, sir. A little bit of context for the IAC's capital request. The members of the commission and the staff take very seriously their role as the state's school construction funds allocation board. The IAC's made real strides in helping counties and school districts solve problems that they face in maintaining their school facilities. We appreciate the very tough fiscal situation that the state is in this year, and we're not here today to pound the table for more than the budgeted amount. We've given the General Assembly and the governor more the IEC's best available data on the urgent facilities needs, which exceed the current legislative funding target by about $170 million this year. The IEC is prepared to fully allocate and award in May whatever capital appropriations it receives. The IEC's mission is to achieve a safe, healthy, and educationally sufficient learning environment for every student in the state. In order to do so, we must achieve a fiscally sustainable portfolio. Otherwise, school facilities conditions will decline year to year. For fiscal 27 CIP, the IAC received LEA requests for funding projects totaling $754 million. IAC staff estimate that the most urgent projects in the state make up around $622 million of that request. The current legislative target of $450 million falls short by about 28%. The shortfall does not represent new need. Rather, it is a result of decreased levels of school construction funding since the majority of the Built to Learn Act funds were awarded prior to 2026, and there is still significant need above what the CIP can cover. The IAC is grateful for the capital budgets provided by the General Assembly and the Governor over the last several years, and within the confines of the very challenging budget situation the General Assembly is facing, the IAC respectfully requests the maximum amount reasonably available to the state continue to be appropriated to school construction so that we can make forward progress. Now, Arabia Davis, our funding program manager, will respond to the analyst question regarding the CIP.
Thank you, Alex, and good evening. In July of each fiscal year prior to the beginning of the CIP session, the IEC sets target allocations for local education agencies and the Maryland School of the Blind. The targets are calculated based upon each local education agency's proportional full-time enrollment and local wealth. The Commission has made it a practice to allow for variations to target allocations for smaller jurisdictions with large school construction projects to help them meet the funding schedules of their projects. Last July, the IEC used a conservative $280 million preliminary capital budget to establish projected awards. This figure considers budget uncertainties, especially given the budget outlook facing the state in FY 2027. In December, the IEC made preliminary awards of 75% of the anticipated preliminary capital budget amount of $280 million, which equaled $210 million. In February, the IEC recommended preliminary awards for 90% of the $280 million to the General Assembly. These two preliminary phases allow the IEC to indicate to counties and school districts the projects to which it expects to award the reasonably likely capital appropriations. Of course, when the budget is passed in April, the actual appropriations amount becomes known. Then in May, the IEC will stand ready to award any additional funds over the $280 million in its May 100% CIP approvals, and plans to use any additional funding that's available for high priority ongoing local education agency projects that need more of their state funding in fiscal year 2027 than the IEC can provide based on the established targets. And now Alex will talk about the COP Priority Fund.
Happy to move to the next second question unless you have any follow-ups, Mr. Chair. Okay, thank you. With regard to prioritizing projects in fiscal 27, how the IAC prioritizes projects to be funded through Priority Fund will depend on whether and how the statute may change during this year or future years. For fiscal 27, the IAC is preparing to use the existing statute to award funds based on the most severe needs using criteria in the statute and similar to the Healthy School Facility Fund program that previously operated until this year. Those are listed in 5326. If the work group does not convene, the COP Priority Fund statute could be modified in a number of ways to allow the IAC to adopt project eligibility criteria and make awards based on a combination of facility condition and educational sufficiency. The commission and staff will be very happy to work with the General Assembly and other state decision makers and stakeholders in order to determine an appropriate and beneficial way forward. In a nutshell, we're prepared to allocate any appropriated funds in the priority fund this year using the statutory criteria provided. However, we are able to flex because this is a special application program, and we could adjust if there is change. I want to make a quick note on this. How this question is answered for the priority fund does not affect how the IAC prioritizes projects within the CIP, which will remain unchanged from past years. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, Mr. Donahue and Ms. Davis. Delegate Ivey, do you still have your question, or are you good now? All right. I don't see any other questions. I believe you guys have been very responsive. Thank you so much for all you do for our young people across the state and making sure that they have awesome facilities. We look forward to, the continued work of the IAC. And I believe that concludes this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you guys so much for coming. We will finish with our last hearing of the day with Baltimore City Community College, and we'll recall Mr. Proppert from Department of Legislative Services for his analysis. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin on the first page, which lists the planned project funding amounts in the 2026 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, for Baltimore City Community College, or BCCC. Everything is funded with GEO bonds except for $2.2 million of general funds in the prior authorization bar. Moving to the update section at the bottom of page 2, the fiscal 2026 operating budget included an authorization for BCCC to use $9 million of special funds from the college's fund balance to purchase an unidentified parcel of land adjacent to the Liberty campus. During summer 2025, BCCC stated it was working with the Department of General Services Office of Real Estate to develop a plan to purchase the property, and it anticipated submitting a facility program by October 30th, 2025. BCCC should comment on the status of its acquisition of the unidentified property, including its engagement with DGS and the status of the Part 1 and Part 2 program plan. Continuing to page 3, the Learning Commons renovation and addition is the only project proposed to receive funding in fiscal 2027. This project will replace outdated building systems and create a more efficient building layout to provide additional study space, among others. The existing Bard Library was built in 1965 and last underwent renovation in 1989. The library was constructed when housing books was the primary function, and it does not meet the standards of a modern library. The $9.8 million budget for fiscal 2027 is $11.7 million less than the amount planned in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program due to lengthened design timeline, which delays the start of construction. Design has been lengthened from 15 to 21 months due to an extended review of schematic design documents by the Maryland State Board of Architecture Review and further scheduling delays caused by vacancies within the college's Capital Facilities Planning Division. The Department of Legislative Services requests that the college update the committees on efforts to fill these vacant positions. The project is currently estimated to cost $44.4 million, which is a $2.3 million increase over the 2025 session estimate, and is primarily attributable to the extended schedule and slightly higher monthly cost escalation rates set by DBM. The construction phase is estimated to commence in March 2027. Out-year projects are discussed beginning on page 4. The 2025 CIP program design and construction in fiscal 2027 and 2028 for the North Pavilion demolition. However, the college requested a change in scope, and the revised schedule and funding plan moves design funding to fiscal 2028 and construction to fiscal years 2029 and 2030 to allow time for review and approval of the requested scope change. The president should discuss what the new scope entails. The nursing building renovation and addition will replace all major building systems and construct additions on the north and south sides of the existing structure. When complete, it will have expanded and reconfigured classroom space for a modern nursing education curriculum, including nursing simulation suites and classroom, laboratory, office, and other support spaces. Previous funding for project design totals $1.3 million, and several delays have since ensued. The 2024 CIP programmed an additional $1.6 million of design funds for fiscal 2026, but the 2025 CIP then deferred those funds until fiscal 27 due to delays in design procurement, which could not move forward until DBM approved the program for the project. The 2026 CIP deferred these design funds once again into fiscal 2028. Total project cost is currently estimated at $53.8 million, and the president should provide an update on the status of BCCC's program approval with DBM. First funded in fiscal 2022, the Deferred Maintenance Program assists BCCC in addressing the backlog of deferred major infrastructure and building systems projects at the main Liberty Heights and North campuses. Since inception, the state has provided $30.7 million for this program. No funding is proposed for fiscal 27, which is consistent with the plan outlined in the 2025 CIP, which programs funding on an every other year basis. The college should provide a status report that identifies all projects funded through the program that have yet to be completed and for which allocated program funds remain unencumbered and unexpended as of February 1st, 2026. The college should also discuss any plans to update the facilities assessment conducted in 2019, which originally informed the campus facilities renewal needs that facilitated the establishment of the college's deferred maintenance program. DLS recommends approving all general obligation bond authorizations and pre-authorizations for BCCC, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions from the subcommittee? All right, we will ask President McCurdy of BCCC, Baltimore City Community College, to join us at the desk, along with any panel that you may have. I did not have any additional witnesses, but if you do have them, we will allow 2 minutes for each person that needs to testify along with you. And if you guys could just tell me your names, I would very much appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Vice Chair, members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. For the record, I'm Deborah McCurdy, President of Baltimore City Community College, and I'm joined by Vice President Michael Thomas, who oversees facilities and workforce. Brandon Cohen, Director of Budgets, to the far right. Dr. Ty Stone, who is our VP for Finance and Administration, and Ms. Becky Burrell, who's VP for Institutional Effectiveness, Research and Planning. Let me thank as well our DLS analysts, David Proppert, and also thank the Assistant Secretary of DGS, Courtney League, and his team for their assistance in project management. And I'd like to say that DGS has certainly been a very welcome and effective partner on all of our projects as well. We thank you for this opportunity to provide brief testimony in support of the Governor's 2027 capital budget recommendations for Baltimore City Community College. That includes $9.8 million in construction funding for the Learning Commons renovation and addition. As well, we'll be requesting an additional $2.1 million in deferred maintenance funds to complete ongoing maintenance projects which were previously approved and funded. The governor's budget demonstrates Maryland's commitment to Baltimore City Community College, and BCCC provides students in surrounding areas certainly with the affordable and accessible higher education, maintaining a steady focus on the ultimate goals of college completion. And over the past 8 years, we have not changed in responding to the demographic who we serve. We continue to keep our tuition low at $110 a credit hour for the last 8 years. And at this point, we believe we'll continue to offer students an affordable and accessible education. We know that decades have passed as well without significant state investment into college facilities, and as the college previously, I think, did not always step forward and establish the kinds of relationships that were needed and the kinds of requests that needed to go forward in order to make the appropriate facility changes to the institution. At the same time, we know that we have dealt with the age of facilities. Many of the facilities on the campus go back to 1965 with little or no change in terms of their upgrades, and we're beginning to see a major change now with the relationships that this administration has formed with the state, DGS, DLS, DBM, more effective partnerships for moving the college forward. We know over the past 5 years that some $30 million has been allocated, and 31 individual projects out of 35 projects that were planned have been initiated or completed. It's a lot of work and a lot of activity on a campus that sits at the heart of Baltimore and continues to sorely need the upgrades in these facilities. And so we thank you as well for your continued support of higher education in the city as well as Baltimore Community College. We know we have a long way to go, but we're playing catch up after years, I think, of the campus being neglected. And as you've heard, other institutions, then some of you know, but please recognize as well that the college does not have an adequate student center. We do not have wellness. We do not have the theaters that people are talking about. We do not have the community outreach, and yet we've continued to serve students in the community for years. We intend now to push forward and to show a different face with requests for a change in funding and a change in how the college operates through our realignment plans that were designated by this legislation back in 2017, prior to my arriving at the institution in 2019, but it's this administration who's seeing the realignment plans for the institution through as well to continue to push us forward. With that, the DLS analysis, the college was asked to comment on 5 issues, and Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to proceed with those issues. Thank you. We were asked to comment on the status of its acquisition of the unidentified property, including its engagement with DGS and the status of Part 1 and Part 2 of the program plan. The college began working closely with DGS, the Office of Real Estate, in June of '25, when the $9 million became available. In our written testimony, which you have, we've provided a high-level overview of the timeline of our progress through this acquisition process. The collaboration work between DGS and BCCC has included a review of the title, obtaining an appraisal, conducting a building assessment, and drafting the offer letter, which we are at this stage expecting that offer letter is being released in the next day or two. We're currently, we're currently reviewing everything else with DGS and the Office of Real Estate, and we're planning to complete a contract by May 2026, scheduled for BPW approval, hopefully in June of '26, and complete the settlement later on in the summer. We will complete Part 1 and Part 2 for the new acquisition as soon as an offer is accepted and prior to encumbering the funds. Mr. Chair, if there are any questions on this question. Okay. The second issue we were asked to comment on is efforts to fill vacant positions in facilities. The college does partner with DGS, who serves as project manager for large capital projects, so we haven't missed much of a beat by welcoming and partnering and collaborating with DGS. Specifically, the Learning Commons project, which is the library, is being managed by DGS, and therefore there have been no delays in this project due to any of the vacancies. The Assistant VP for Facilities and the Assistant Director of Capital Projects positions, we recognize they are vacant. However, we also recognize that these positions have been posted and we have continued to interview. These positions will not be filled until there are people who have and bring the adequate experience and exposure to fill and to hold these positions. But at the same time, working with DGS, we have moved the projects forward. We've retained a consultant who also has extensive knowledge and experience in assisting the college's capital budget needs. Overall, when we look at this project, we are nearing the bid stage, as well as we continue to work with the architects and work with DGS on a regular basis. Several factors contributed to the vacancy rate, which is decreasing. So over the last year or so, we see about a 3% decrease in the vacancy rate. Certainly retirements and resignations continue to play a significant role in the vacancy rate. We have implemented a new applicant tracking system for greater efficiency, and our college is not so unlike other institutions that also are suffering in the labor market as well in filling viable positions. The third issue that DLS requests is an explanation of the revised scope for the demolition of the North Pavilion on our campus. The North Pavilion is a facility that has long needed the demolition, and where it sits, certainly in the heart of part of the residential community as well. So the original plan was to convert this site into green space, pending the determination of how to repurpose the property. The plan now in the repurposing is to demolish the building and convert the site to a certified CDL testing facility and a driving range for CDL practice testing to support the college's workforce development and continuing education program. So it was to be a green site pending the determination of how to repurpose. This will become a certified MBA testing site to support the CDL courses taught at the South Pavilion. The college provides 2 courses which prepare students for CDL B licensure. The labor market for Class B CDL drivers in Baltimore is considered and is currently highly active, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, characterized by a steady demand for local delivery, waste management, and construction-related transportation. This project will allow BCCC to provide this certification on campus with an MBA certified site instead of sending the students off-site to complete the requirements, thereby attracting more students to our program, leading to gainful employment. The fourth item and fourth question that we've been asked to respond is an update on DBM's program approval of the nursing building renovation and addition. DBM has reviewed this program, submitted in 2021, with several rounds of revisions, but has not yet issued the final approval letter. We last responded to technical questions raised by DGS in October 2025, and we anticipate DBM's approval within the next few weeks. We look to getting the approval for this critical expansion of a health sciences and health services facility. And at this point, we have provided all of the information. We've provided written testimony. You can see the script for what we have done and what we've provided regarding the nursing building. The last question, DLS has asked for a status report on funded deferred maintenance projects to include projects that have not yet been completed and an update on our plan to update the facilities assessment. As of February 1st, $17.1 million remains unencumbered for deferred maintenance. However, we have 11 ongoing deferred maintenance projects, most of which have completed up to the design phase, with a total construction estimate of $19.2 million. This increase has occurred primarily due to cost increases in the fine arts curtain wheel and roof replacement project. The current estimate of 5.7 is 2.1 million higher than the original estimate due to the time difference between the original estimate and due to inflation. The college is requesting 2.1 million to fill the shortfall required to award and complete the project. In addition to the funded deferred maintenance projects, the college has experienced several facilities emergencies resulting from the years of neglect and unfunded maintenance projects, which has resulted in about $400 and some odd in emergency procurements. so far in FY26 paid from the college's operating budget. The college is currently working, and we've been asked about our master plan. The college is currently working on updating its 10-year master plan, which includes an update to the 2019 building assessment to address additional deferred maintenance and priorities. We have provided the mandated annual updates to the master plan as required by the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Once the revised plan is completed, the updated master plan will be submitted to the Department of Budget Management, the Department of General Services, and the Maryland Higher Education Commission, according to the timeline that has been established. As far as DLS recommended GO bond actions, the college concurs with the recommended action to fund the Learning Commons Library project. Thank you again for your time and attention, and any questions, Mr. Chair, we would be very pleased to answer.
Excuse me, subcommittee members, are there any questions? Thank you so much, Madam President, for your very thorough, absolutely responsive response to the DLS analysis. It's very refreshing. I don't believe anybody has any questions. As a lifelong Baltimorean and someone who lived about 5 minutes from your school most of my life, I gotta say, yeah, I understand what you inherited. I'm very proud of the way you're approaching it. And I appreciate the efforts and the preparedness that you all presented today. Your team is looking real intimidating. And I just also got to note, you know, the reputation that your school has had historically for nursing really compels us to have to help you, and we will be your partners as well in pushing that initiative forward for your nursing school and the facilities. I wish you very well on establishing a new library as the son of a librarian, and thank you all so much. Unless there's anything else you all have to offer, Delegate Metzger.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I have got to say that you've been coming here several years now, and I saw the school at this level, and I see the school at the launching pad, and I see it about to take off in an explosive way, which is just so refreshing. And how you've expressed everything in detail, I just want to tell you I'm impressed, and whatever I can do to help you, Rick Metzger's here for you.
That means you can go back to Baltimore and say you got bipartisan support.
I do thank you, and I do invite the committee, members of the committee, please come and see us so that you have a good sense. Some of you already do. We are an urban campus. We are the community's community college, and I thank you for the continued support as we reach out to the demographic who we serve.
Amen. Yep, as one of the only jurisdictions in Baltimore City that does not have a college or university, and since y'all are so close to my district, I'm claiming you. Thank you all so much. This ends the hearing for BCCC and also our budget hearings for today. Thank you everyone for your patience. Thank you subcommittee members, and good night.